I have to mention this. You have broken quite a few glass ceilings at a very young age. What was the most challenging moment in this process?
I grew up on a council estate that is a social housing estate. That made me realise how difficult sometimes it is for people to get help when they need it most.
And I'm so thrilled to be joined today from the UK by Baroness Carmen Smith.
And I put my name in because I wanted my party membership to have a debate and a discussion about actually what we want to use that role for.
Your story is incredibly touching, and I would say quite different than from most of the members of the House of Lords, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome back to another episode of Female Empowerment, the podcast. My name is Simone, and I'm so thrilled to be joined today from the UK by Baroness Carmen Smith. Baroness Carmen, what is the best way to announce you?
Just call me Carmen.
Thank you so much for taking the time and be here with us to talk about your career, your life. It's immensely fascinating. You're young, you're a baroness, you have quite an accomplished career. So I'll jump right in with the first question is the woman you are today, what made you or who shaped and influenced you? Because I do think the person we eventually become in life, people early on and situations, they shape us, and I would absolutely love to hear your story.
Thank you for inviting me on today to speak to you. And yes, no, I think on like reflection of my own journey. So I grew up as well the youngest of seven, so quite a big family, and I grew up on a council estate, but maybe international listeners, that is a social housing estate. So I think that shaped me in terms of also, I suppose, being and knowing what it's like to not have much. And also my dad was a really hard worker, and his like way that he that worked so hard, I think instilled like a value into me as well about like wanting to work hard and always working hard. And so I've always worked from quite a young age. But I think one of the key moments growing up that shaped me was when I was younger, I became a carer for my dad. So unfortunately, he became very ill. And during that time of being a carer, I think that I grew a lot as an individual, but I was still very young. But it taught me as well, like dealing with helping my dad with different daily activities, but also making appointments with the doctor and stuff like that, made me, I suppose, realize how difficult it is to like the systems in Wales, but also in the UK, how difficult sometimes it is for people to get help when they need it most. So I think that has, to be honest, shaped a lot of what my politics is today. And now in the House of Lords, actually my title, Baroness Smith of Llan Vice, I chose Llan Vice because that is the council estate, the social housing estate that I grew up on. And the whole purpose of that to me is to like remember my roots and where I come from and bring that with me to what I do now, and always remember why I'm doing it. And it's to make a difference for people for good.
Your story is incredibly touching, and I would say quite different than from most of the members of the House of Lords, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you so much for sharing your story, but I have to ask, why politics and also why House of Lords? How did this happen? Because as I said, your background, you're rather the exception than the rule in the House of Lords, right?
Yeah, I certainly am. Well, I entered the House of Lords at the age of 27. Um, and the average age of the House of Lords is 71, and it's made up of 70% men. So well, I'm now 29, but as a young woman going into that space, but also being from Wales, which also isn't as represented in the Lords as places like in South England and London. I'm not your usual appointment, but I guess your question there is like how that came about. And it's a bit of a different story because I don't know if your listeners know this as well, but the House of Lords, which is the second chamber of Parliament in the UK, is completely unelected, so it's fully appointed. and there's about 760-ish members there currently, which is a lot bigger than our first chamber, the House of Commons. But the appointments are made by the Prime Minister, signed off by the King, and it's not a open process, it's not transparent. It's usually what happens is that political party leaders choose their friends or people that donate lots of money to their parties and then give them a seat in the Lords. But surprise, surprise, that wasn't my journey. Um, and how I became a member is so my party, Plaid Cymru, which is in English the Party of Wales, and one of our policies and positions is that we don't believe in having an unelected chamber. And so you might ask why we've 10 people. Well, we had an internal election process basically to decide on who we put forward, because even though we don't believe that in the system currently as it is, like surely, I mean, well, our view is very clear that people who make laws and make decisions that affect people's day-to-day lives should have that democratic accountability with the people. And that's not what the Lords is. Our party had an internal election, which is unheard of as well, to then put forward candidates. And I put my name in because I wanted my party membership to have a debate and a discussion about actually what we want to use that role for. So do we just want to continue the status quo and continue with what others send, which is usually men of a certain age and a certain background, or do we want to tell a different story? And that's, I suppose, where my candidacy came in, and that was what I stood on. Was actually, look, I am clear that I also disagree with an elected chamber, but I'm going to go in and be honest about that and try and change that. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get into the system if you want to change something.
Yeah.
You cannot do it from the outside. Yeah, that's no, I completely see that. Wow, you've mentioned around 70% are men in the House of Lords, and
Yes.
also the average age is around 70,
Yeah.
um,
71.
or 71. Yeah, 71. As a young woman, what gives you a unique perspective, and also from your background, sitting there and in the debates, in the decision making? What's like your unique perspective, and what has give you the advantage?
Yeah, so I at first, when I was appointed, I did have a bit of fear, I guess, in terms of a lot of people were like, "You're too young, you're not from the right background for us here," basically. And it does, when you hear that a lot, you start to also think that. But there
Yeah.
was a changing moment for me when I was actually like, actually, I am the youngest, I am a young woman, and there's certain perspectives that I have that a lot of people share across the UK that just isn't represented here. So that's what I've kind of tried to do as well. So there's been some debates where I'm like, actually, I am the expert in this whole chamber on this issue. And I'll give you examples on that is I got involved in a debate on period poverty. And I was sat in that chamber thinking, I'm probably the only person in this chamber that actually currently still has a period. And so when I got up and talked about, when we talk about providing free sanitary products
Oh,
and
yes.
um, yeah, and like pushing for more respect for that policy, like I felt like, well, do you know what? I'm proud that I'm there. I'm pushing that perspective as someone with that experience. But then it's also wider than that. There was this bill that came forward um, last year that I got involved in, which
Okay.
basically would criminalise the fake images created of people, particularly women usually, and sexualised, and
Mhm.
criminalised it, and that affects a lot of young women. So I was really proud to be able to kind of bring those stories to the chamber, talking about young women's experiences. So that's how I've kind of turned it on its head, is that I'm there to represent that voice that currently isn't there as well.
Absolutely
Yeah.
admire your courage, your confidence, because I have talked to many young female members of parliament who
Mhm,
doubted or still doubt themselves so much. And I asked myself, where does that come from, and how can we and I don't say this in a form of bashing, but if it were a man, the same age, the same position, they wouldn't doubt themselves so much. So how can we help young women to stand up, have the courage to run for a position, especially in politics, not doubt themselves. I mean, a healthy amount of doubt is okay, but
Yeah.
not too much, you know? And so I think, thank you so much for pointing these aspects out. I really loved the story on the period because, yeah, it's true. The free products, I remember a couple of months ago was a huge debate in Germany too. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for pointing that out. Yeah, incredible. Yeah, your entire political journey is incredibly fascinating. And I want to know more about your day-to-day life. If we were,
Mm.
for example, from the podcast, if and the listeners, we were shadowing you for a day, what would it look like? What is your entire decision-making process? Well, life in the House of Lords, what is it like?
Yeah, so I actually live in Cardiff, so I love Wales, and everyone knows that about me. So I don't think I'd ever want to move from Wales. And so what it looks like in terms of like what my, I suppose, like a week being in the House of Lords is that I'd often travel up on a Monday to Westminster, and I would be in Westminster for the week. Usually, what happens is we'll start each parliamentary session with some like questions to the ministers, where you have the opportunity. There's some like that are chosen in advance, which are a bit hard. It's a bit like a lottery, and then for each question that is asked, also there's 10 minutes where anyone can stand up and get involved, which is quite daunting to be honest. As unlike most parliaments, so like actually, so like the House of Commons, the first chamber in our case, there is usually a speaker that calls people's names. But in the House of Lords, that's not the case, and it's self-regulating. So you stand up and you try and make your point, but then if someone else has also stood up, it's the last person stood up that gets to speak. And sometimes it means that people in the chamber have to start shouting someone's name, so it's quite a difficult environment to try and get your voice heard. And at first, that was
Right?
what? Sorry.
Especially as a
Yeah.
young woman, right?
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. And I'd even go as far as like, yeah, especially women's voices, because women's voices, so men's voices are usually a bit deeper. And how it
Yeah.
works in the parliamentary chamber is that there's microphones hanging, which you can't see on the TV, but there's microphones hanging from the ceiling. And when a man
Okay.
starts speaking, a microphone can usually pick up a deeper voice first. So they're already projected
Yeah.
more. So it can be quite
Yeah.
hard for women to get in that kind of environment. But yeah, these are some of the examples I'm talking about where like the whole system is not designed for ordinary people from working backgrounds, people whose voices don't usually get heard. But then surely the
Yeah.
whole point of a parliament is to make sure those voices that don't get heard are heard. And the system designed just doesn't suit that really.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you on that one. But it is hard, right? It is, well, it's challenging. I
Mhm.
don't like the word hard because challenging, it's, yeah, it might look hard at first, but I do think we can overcome it. So, what I wanted to ask you, as a leader, you have, in your young years, you have quite a lot of experience in that. What shaped you the most and also in the decision-making process?
In when I make decisions, yeah. So I think I've changed a bit in over time of like how I make decisions, and I think now what I tend to do more of is I really like to read up and listen on both sides of the argument. Even when I completely disagree with a specific perspective, I really want to
Yeah.
understand why someone might feel that way. And I think the reason why I'm always trying to do that now is because there's this a sense of I always want to try and get people to find common ground, especially in politics, because the only way to really get stuff done is by having a bigger group of people that support moving forward. So even if it's a small step that isn't what I want at the end of the day, but it's better than the status quo. So how I kind of make decisions is it isn't, to be honest with me, I don't see things as all or nothing. I see it as like, well, okay, they're not going to do this thing that I think that I really want to happen. However, if I can get them to move just a few steps forward, that is better than what we currently have. And then just keep on persisting until you get
Yeah.
that outcome you want. And that's how I suppose I see about making decisions. And it's not always black and white. And if you can get more people to agree with you at the end, then that's great. But at the beginning, people will be on different sides, and I just want to try and work out a way where you can kind of meet in the middle.
Absolutely. It's more than anything, I would say that debating, decision making is very often a gray area. The more people are involved and the more perspectives come into play. Absolutely. Is there a skill or habit that you picked up during now your time in House of Lords to to be a better leader that helped you in the sense of being a better leader?
Yeah, so I think actually it goes back to persistence. And what I mean by that is growing up when I was a young carer and constantly being passed pillar to post when trying to get different support or help meant that I had to be persistent to try and get that help or support I needed and needed for my dad. And I think that's actually something that I've taken into politics as well, is that even if the door closes and it's not the outcome I want, I will still persist and I will try different avenues. So, right, you close that door, I'm gonna dig a hole underneath it instead. So I think that's something that comes from just who I am and how I grew up, is that persistence to not give up, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. It is very often you have to also find which door works for you in
Yeah,
order to see, because if it's a new ground you're working on, or a new project or a new situation, whatever it might be, that you have to figure out. And the longer you persist, the better you get to know yourself
yeah.
and you can open different doors.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I have to mention this. You have broken quite a few glass ceilings at a very young age. What was the most challenging moment in this process?
Yeah, so I think whenever I kind of reflect on questions like this, I might give different answers, but I think a key one to me, in terms of like something that really tested me, I guess, was when my appointment to the Lords was announced. There was a lot of like traction and attention. I felt like at the time it was mainly like negative and quite personal. But that was just, my reflection. And that was hard, that initial criticism. And a lot of women in politics face more of that criticism, to be honest, for just
Yeah,
being a woman. And we have seen like, and that's not even just a perception, there is clear evidence that that is the case.
yeah,
And that was hard, but what I suppose got me to overcome that and to be, to be accepting of like having to find that hard as I think most people would. So I think it would be kind of strange if it didn't affect me. Was that
yeah,
actually I remembered why I'm doing it. And I was doing it because yet again, you pointing out there, it was like it was a glass ceiling. So there was being the youngest member there, being from Wales, being a woman, that was just unheard of. What I remembered at that time was actually, well, if I can do a good job at this, the next time someone from a background that isn't necessarily accepted here gets a seat in Parliament, then they're asked more about like, oh, what are the different experiences and stuff that are gonna impact their politics here? Some of the questions that you've been asking me actually, in terms of like, yeah, like what has shaped them and what is it the things that they care about that and what kind of communities do they come from? If I can just change that, even for one person, that'll be a massive win. So that's kind of like how I
yeah.
overcome it, was being like, well, okay, next time it's not going to be as hard for the next person, hopefully, if I can do a good job and support that person.
It's also seeing the example. And I just quickly wanted to go back what you mentioned. Women are being judged harsher than men.
Yeah.
This is true. And I've caught myself quite a couple of times doing it myself. And I remember one time Taylor Swift mentioned in an interview, we have to rewire how we think about women and how we judge people. I remember that was a situation. I didn't really, it was from a distance. I saw a driver coming up one of these trains in Germany. So I didn't know if it was a woman or a man. So there were like these quick changing moments where I was like, oh, it's a man. And I was like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He looks competent. But then I looked again, maybe it's a woman. I was like, yeah, she looks kind of bossy. Like this is this conscious
Yeah.
thinking. And I was like, hang on, here we are again, judging women so harshly. And as you mentioned, there is clear evidence and we have to
Yeah.
rewire our thinking. I have to completely agree with Taylor Swift on that matter. Yeah, that is absolutely true. And I would encourage everybody to absolutely rewire their thinking, uh, rethink how we perceive the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, just a quick mention, it was on the not the last before the episode we had Harvard professor and a human rights activist Alicia Ely Yemen on the podcast, and she said power is when we can reframe and challenge the way aspects are being perceived, and that is absolutely true. So
Uh-huh.
we have to be more conscious about the power that is in reframing thinking. Thank you so much for pointing all these aspects out. It's incredible. Your life, your story from such a young age is incredibly fascinating and interesting. And my last question in the deep dive section is
Mhm.
if a 22 or 20-ish year old student would ask you about how to prepare for a life in politics, what would you tell the student?
I would first actually talk about actually what they think politics is and also what politics can be to them, because I think there's always a presumption, like, I think when we talk about like a life in politics, is that means being elected into a role. But to me, politics is way bigger than that, and it's about a lot more than just those elected in positions or that work for the work in parliament. It's also about how you can campaign on different issues that you care about, volunteer in your community, be part of a bigger campaign, put forward a petition, and like contribute to a team effort of wanting to make change for something. Like, to me, how I got started was when I had, when I was a carer, it actually politicized me because I wanted to then make things better for other carers in the future. So I changed national policy on it, on in terms of how much support carers who are young people get when they're studying, for example. And that was something that was because of I was just like, I've seen this barrier, I know what it is. I want other people after me to not have that. And that's what I would say is it's about understanding and reflecting on the things that get you out of bed and you want to see changed, and seeing what the best way is to do that. It could be you supporting someone to stand for an election and then changing that in the government, or it could be you leading a campaign group or being part of a campaign group that puts pressure on to make the change happen. So I would just say it depends on what it is that they want to see changed, but for them to definitely get involved because their voice is important.
Thank you so much. I have to say, you broadened my horizon from the way from your story, from the way you perceive the world. You've experienced it, or still are experiencing it. So thank you so much for letting us know into your professional life, but also your why behind politics, which
Yeah.
is very, very fascinating. Thank you so much. And I'm absolutely excited to dive into the next part of the interview or podcast episode for that matter, is the fast question and answer section where we want to get to know you personally a bit better.
Yeah.
And start right away. If you could invite three historical women for a dinner party, who would that be?
Yeah, so, I mean, that would be awesome for one. I mean, as I am very passionate about Wales, I'd love to invite like Welsh women from history to that, I think. So one would be Betty Campbell, who was the first black head teacher in Wales. And I think she's been quite a big inspiration. Megan Lloyd George, who was the first Welsh member of Parliament, and Lady Rhondda, who was a suffragette, so fighting for a woman to get the vote. And I believe there's a statue of all three of them now in Wales, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I would love to go to that dinner party too.
Yeah.
So sadly we can't have that, but it would be amazing. If someone met you for the first time, what is one habit or personality trait that immediately gives you away as a Welsh person?
Probably that I probably would have already mentioned it. That would have been part of the conversation. Yeah, but I'm very proud of being from Wales. I'd be surprised if it didn't come straight up in conversation in terms of where are you from? Wales. Yeah, yeah. That national pride, I
I-
think.
If somebody is in
Yeah,
politics and they represent a region, a county, a district, whatever, it depends on the parliament they're in,
yeah,
they should be proud of where they come from because they're representing that part of the country, right?
exactly.
Absolutely. A book you recently read, or maybe a podcast you heard that made you change your mind on a certain issue.
Well, at the moment, I'm reading Frankly by Nicola Sturgeon. So, and I'm really enjoying it at the moment because it talks about her party's journey to journey during the Scottish referendum for independence and lessons that she's learned as a leader. So yeah, I think I'm most surprised about how open she's been. But I'm really enjoying that book at the moment.
Yeah, I've heard about. I saw her on the book promo tour. I have to order it since I'm at the moment in South America. It's quite difficult, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll get it in an ebook version. But she's fantastic, a very very inspirational woman.
Yeah, definitely.
What is one item on your or point on your bucket list you definitely still want to do?
Just want to see the whole world. Whenever I get the opportunity to go traveling somewhere, I always think I learn something else, and I love meeting people from different cultures. So, yeah, I just want to see more of the world, basically. That is definitely on my bucket list.
Did your friends describe you in one word? And getting to know you in this podcast, what context? You're such a good spirit. I think a good sport. It's fun to
Yeah.
talk to you. So
Thanks.
energy. Definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
What's one thing about the House of Lords that sounds like a myth or even like an old rumor that is surprisingly true?
Well, I think, to be honest, that it still exists in 2025. The fact that we still have lords and baronesses in 2025, I think that is still quite surprising to me too. Yeah, so just the whole mystery of it, I guess. It's a bit like Hogwarts.
You know what? When I was just a couple of days ago, a friend was over
Yeah.
and I was like, well, I'm going to have a Baroness on the podcast. And then friend was like, yeah, a Baroness, do we still have that? Is that
Yeah,
still a thing? Yeah, absolutely.
we are.
Show proof. And it was like, yeah, see here.
Exactly.
It's been a once in a lifetime experience for you.
Oh, well, I think becoming a member of the second chamber is pretty surprising and shocking. I don't think I would have thought that would have happened to me in the past. But hopefully I'll abolish it. So that's the aim.
We picked up again after some time.
Going back to the gym actually. So I enjoy weightlifting, but I haven't
Oh, me
been
too.
very good or consistent at it in a while. But I'm back in the gym, so I'm enjoying that.
It's actually such a great way to unwind, to really, especially if you have a lot of
Yeah.
mind work during the day, just, get some physical work. I love that. I just, yeah, that's a
Yeah, I love
wonderful way to unwind. Absolutely. The last series you've binge watched.
Handmaid's Tale. So I am
Oh yeah.
just 2 episodes left actually. Don't spoil the ending for me, but yeah, no, I've
I
been
haven't
watching.
watched it,
Yeah.
by the way.
Have you not?
Question I was like, oh, I hope it's not the summer I turned pretty, that series. No, no, just kidding. Because I'm full of it at the moment. No, no, but The Handmaid's Tale, it's actually from what I've heard, it's quite a great series. I have the book. I still have to read it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's some similarities with
which?
what I suppose what's happening in politics today as well. So it's yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's an interesting watch.
Yes. I think Margaret Atwood is the author, right? The way
Yeah, Margaret.
um the way she has a very fascinating way of writing, and also the the book adaptations into movie and series, they have been quite amazing. So yeah, definitely recommend it. I'll put it away in the description below, or my
Yeah.
team will definitely. What is the impact you want to leave behind?
Just want to make a difference, but like a good difference. And what's also really important to me is that I keep the ladder down. And what I mean by that is bring people up with me and people from all different types of backgrounds. And I want to support them into politics. So,
Yeah,
but as part of that, make a difference. That's surely what anyone should be in politics for, is to make a positive difference.
yeah, making a difference. I love that. Absolutely. And I have to add,
Mhm.
it's not a question, but if you could, is there a question you wish that young female political leaders are being asked more?
Often I think actually they're not asked if like or encouraged to stand for leadership. And I think they should be encouraged more to stand for leadership roles, because we see in politics often that it is male dominated. And if we have more women in leadership positions, then hopefully we'd have more women interested in politics too. That's why, to be honest, I joined my party was I was inspired by a woman leader at the time, and I don't think I would be a member of any political party without having that kind of inspiration. So, like encouraging more women to who are already good leaders to stand for leadership.
Yes, see the example.
Mm,
Have others help you up, especially if they're higher already in their career or in life already. So that
yeah.
can make absolutely the difference. Carmen, thank you so much for taking the time to share your trajectory, your life, your points of view. So much fun to talk to you, but also inspirational, highly inspirational. So thank you so much for taking the time, and I wish you all the best. We wish you all the best in what's still to come because you're young, you have an incredible career. So I think there's way, way more to come.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's been really, really fun talking with you.